How's it going, everybody? I wanted to take a couple of minutes here this morning to talk a little bit about some of the comments that have been left lately. All good stuff. Don't think that this is going to be me, shaking my finger at you. You shouldn't have said that or done that or whatever. This is more me just trying to give everybody an idea of timeline and things like that. My goal is whenever I have downtime outside of my working hours, my goal is to focus on getting the ENARSI workbook done. Now, the benefit to it is there are a lot of topics to cover, and the topology is pretty big. And I've actually flipped over to Firefox because the scale works out a lot nicer than the way Chrome does it. But my goal here is to have everything labeled accordingly. So I'm assuming, because we're going to be covering both ENCOR and ENARSI, the configuration topics and some coverage of the any like theoretical, described topics that are on the blueprint. We'll go into a little bit of detail on them just so there's some coverage. But hey, this is not the real world networking series. That's going to be a whole separate topology and a whole separate set of capabilities. So there was a comment about how I've got just a ring topology here, and I don't have anything interconnecting the distribution switches to the core. And the idea is just to make it easier to follow. That's really what it comes down to. I will be doing some documentation here on it, so I'll call stuff out. So and I'll give you an example of what I mean. So we take this guy right here. This will be the SPIs that'll be running here. And I might have to adjust this out here a little bit so it's easier to follow. But just to give you an example of what I mean by this, because I'm assuming the people that are going to be viewing this are coming from a CCNA level, and they're working their way up to CCNP. So I'm not going to assume that everybody's going to have the foresight or the ability to see the networking the way that I do. So, and this is meant to be beneficial to the viewer in that respect. So, for example, what I plan on doing here is 802.1q trunk, right? So my goal here is to literally label it so that there's no question as to what's going on there. And I'm going to take these sections of these, I'm going to break these, I'm going to modularize them, if that's a word. Actually, let me get rid of this guy. Actually, can I just delete it? Yeah, we're just going to delete it. Yep, and then I'll do this. I'll put this guy here. This will make more sense. 10 through 11 and 10 through 11. There we go. That'll make it easier to... I'm just trying to think of ways to not have it so crowded and be an eye chart of details. And then these will be access ports and things like that. So my goal is to take stuff like this. Let me duplicate this just so you guys have an idea where I'm going with this. And something like this. So this will be its own like module or part of the network, something along these lines. So I might even move this down to here and then have one over here. So it's just like duplicate this so that it's obvious as to what it is and what it's doing. 100% intentional in the labeling of what I'm trying to do here. And we'll do stuff like this, right? This will be an 802.1q trunk, and then I'm going to do another one up here that'll be PO-12, stuff like that. So it'll be evident. I wish I wouldn't do that. Send to back. Oh, nope. Oh, darn it. I hate when that happens. Send to front. Sent it back. Okay, so anyway, that did not work out the way that I wanted it to. Just go ahead and delete that. Yes, we'll delete that shape. The goal here is to have it set up in such a way that it'll be obvious as to what part of the network we're talking about. Because I can't assume that you guys are going to be able to correlate what it is that I'm talking about. And so we'll do something like this, where we'll have it bracketed like this, right? And it'll be evident when we look at it. Like, okay, in distribution 1 and 2 block, or I'll have some sort of labeling and the configuration will be broken out. And so there's a question about the actual configuration. So the workbooks that I create, they're always all encompassing, meaning that everything you need for the workbook is included in the workbook itself. So if there's any additional data that you need when you go to buy the workbook or get access to it, that information will be available from the download link. The topology diagram, the ENG file, all that stuff will be able to be imported into your example. I'm using iOS V, so it's intentionally a lighter operating system versus CSR 1000V, which is not necessary. Now I'll move this port channel 12 up to here, so it'll be evident what it is that we're dealing with. So anytime you see a subnet, automatically think a routed connection. Simple as that. So these are things that I want you guys to keep in the back of your mind. I will be doing this everywhere that it's necessary. So that is my goal with that. And so eventually what this will look like, if I move this in here, we'll see if that'll fit. Yep, that'll fit there. Is I will do something like this. We'll duplicate the box, and then we'll have something like this up here where these guys will be put here and here respectively. And I'll do something like this where it'll be obvious as to what it is. There, just like that. So it'll be something like that. It'll be evident, very obvious to you. And I might have to make some adjustments and stretch things out so that it's obvious as to what the connection looks like. But that's my goal, is to have it very obvious as to what area of the network I'm configuring, because this will help with like a network design. If you were to look at the way that I like to build my Visios whenever I'm working on a customer network, is I like to do a layer 1. So I like the physical, all the connections connecting everything together, and all that type of stuff. And then I like to have a layer 2 piece to it, where I will document out, okay, these are trunks, these are port channels, these are VPCs, things like that, the VLANs that are being used, all that type of stuff, so that it's very, very obvious what's happening at layer 2 in this part of the network. And then same thing with layer 3. I like to lay out where the layer 1, 2, and 3 is, so that you have a full idea of what's going on. I don't like paste the routing table into the documentation, but I will say, you know, OSPF enabled or EIGRP enabled or whatever the case might be. So it's very evident of what's going on. So then when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, okay, so those are .1Q trunks. There's a port channel here, you know, so on and so forth. So it's very obvious as to what's going on between the devices, and there's no guesswork, right? That's one of the things that I think is, it takes a little bit longer to build out the topology when you're doing that, but it makes it very easy to follow. So for example, one of the things, I'm looking at my whiteboard past the camera. So if it looks like I'm looking at the camera, I'm actually looking past it. There's a couple of things that are technically outside of the realm of the blueprint, but I'm going to cover them anyway because I feel like they're good to know. And that's going to be doing a regular policy-based site-to-site VPN using a crypto map. And that'll be done between Hub 1 and Spoke 1. And then for Spoke 2, we're going to do a GRE over IPsec deployment, where you're going to see how that'll come into play. So we'll configure a tunnel between Hub 1 and Spoke 2, get that configured, get that stood up, GRE over IPsec. we'll be able to get the communication going back and forth, all the stuff that goes along with that. And we're probably going to do two, and we'll source them from different IP addresses. So we'll have one going over MPLS and then one going over the internet. And then we'll work on how you would prefer to use, say, MPLS, because it's, you know, a SLA-backed connection versus using internet as a backup or secondary tunnel. And if something happens, why would we choose to go over the internet versus the MPLS-based tunnel? And then DMBPN, where spokes 3, 4, and 5 will be all connected to each other via DMBPN, and then we'll be able to get interlocation communication going back and forth, and how all that type of stuff will work out. These are the ideas that I have when I'm trying to build this stuff out to try to make the workbook more valuable, and the idea behind that. So that's essentially where that comes into play. So that's the ENARSI, ENCOR and ENARSI mindset that I've got for the workbook that I'm working on. I'm hoping over the next couple of days to have all of it noted. It's like all the IP addressing done on all of the on the network diagram, and then I can flip over to starting to get all the devices stood up, get the initial configurations in, and start building the workbook out. And do all of the, we're going to do like layer 2, then layer 3, walk through static routing, EIGRP, OSPF, BGP, MPLS, DMBPN, IPsec, the security pieces to it, and all that type of stuff. So there's a lot that's going to go into it. Now, once that's all done, my goal is I'm going to release the workbook once that is complete, and all the troubleshooting that goes along with that. So there will be a deploy section to the workbook, and then there will also be a troubleshooting section to the workbook, where once we get everything working and we have a known good configuration with everything, and everything that we want to have operational is in there, then I can flip over, and you guys will be like, then we'll intentionally break, 25, 30 things, whatever that number comes out to be. Maybe I see more and then I add more options, or whatever the case might be. This topology is big enough, it's going to give us a lot of flexibility, and there will be interdependent things that will have to be worked on. In other words, if an example would be like, fix the GRE tunnel from hub 1 to spoke 2. I'm not able to reach the loopback address of spoke 2, or whatever, the connected network there. And so, you might have to get internet routing working again, or the MPLS peering that it should have isn't working, and then you'll have to work your way through that. So the intention is to try to, if you understand how the technologies that are meant to get these things working operate, they're configured, and verify them, then all you're doing is going back through all of your verification steps without looking at show run. You can, 99% of the time, you should be able to figure out why something isn't working relatively easily. So there's that. Now, one of the things that I also want to make mention before I'll let you guys loose for the weekend is this. If we come back over here to real world, it's not on this one, it's on this server. If we look at, this is a topology that I'm working on building out for service provider. But if we look at real world networking, there was a comment made. Go ahead and open this thing up real quick. There was a comment made about SD-WAN on one of the comments made, and I think it's a good idea. Now, I haven't gone through and learned the updated way of doing SD-WAN, so that'll be something that'll probably be coming. But real world networking is going to happen after I get ENARSI done. So I'm got to prioritize what's out there. And real world networking is more of a nice to have, where ENARSI I think is going to be more beneficial. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is the internet edge redundancy discussions we've had recently, where we have, and I'm going to build this out real quick just so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So if we were to take a couple routers, let's say we take 2 CSRs, we'll do 2, and we're going to call these PEs. And where do these guys get rolled out? I don't see them. Anyway, well, that's unfortunate. They're around somewhere. I just don't see them at the moment. Oh, right there. Right here and right there. Okay, so we take these two guys, right? These are going to be our internet edge devices. And then we do the same thing. We take two more. We'll call these CSRs, but we'll do two more. We'll say edge. We'll save that. We'll take this guy here, and we'll take this guy here. And let me go ahead and zoom out just a little bit so that I have more room. That's just making it harder for us to see it. So then we'll do node. I do have Palo here, so we'll take two Palos, PA, and we'll say save. We'll take this guy out here, this guy out here, and then last but certainly not least, we're going to go ahead and take a couple of 9Ks because that's how this customer was set up. Say N9, and then we're going to save that like so. They're going to get rolled out here, just like this. And so we'll have this guy sitting here, like so. And then we'll have this guy sitting here like that. So this would be the internet edge. So if you were to look at Nexus 925 here, for example, there would be a Palo firewall sitting northbound of him. And then you would have, let me go ahead and pull out a couple of regular switches. So we'll just do two. Call them switch for the sake of argument. Okay, and then we're going to put these guys in between the Palo and the internet edge routers. So we're going to take this guy, we're going to move him down, and then we're going to take these guys and we're going to move him down. So the way that this would flow is you would have the 9Ks that would be connected to each other as VPCs, and then they would each have a link up to the Palos. The hardware's there, I can draw this out. And actually, let me go ahead and zoom in specifically on this piece, just so you guys can see what it looks like. And just for clarity's sake, these switches right here, we won't be able to mimic it, but they were in a stack. So it's two physically different switches with a virtual stackwise cable between the two. And so what we would end up doing, let me go ahead and flip over here to black for the lines. So what we would do is these guys would be connected to each other like so. Right, you'd have your keep alive and then your peer link in a port channel. And then you'd have connections going up to here. And then here. So this would be your active, this guy would be your standby, and there would be a link between the two for your HA link. And then you'd have this guy connected to here, this guy connected to here, and then you would have a link from here to here, and then a link from here to here. Now mind you, there is a stackwise cable connecting these two together. So that little curly Q is my stackwise cable. And then you're going to have a link here and then a link here. So what we would end up doing is we would do EBGP here. We would do just a regular static default route here on the active Palo, and you'd have a VIP sitting here. So you'd do HSRP here. It's supposed to be a P. And whoever owns the VIP would be your pointer. So .1 is your VIP. You would have a static default route pointing to .1, and this guy would be your primary. And then you would have EBGP here and EBGP here, and then you're just receiving a default route from the provider. And what would end up happening is, in the event that something happened on this guy or what have you, then you would be able to push the documentation wherever you need it to go, and the pings would go out, and if something were to happen, you would be able to fail from this guy to this guy. He would now own .1, and then you would point your default route this way, but you wouldn't fail back. And so I'm going to walk you through what that looked like. It's a fairly straightforward design. It took a little bit to get it to work, but this is essentially what we're going to do. I'm going to build this topology, or this internet edge design into real world networking. It won't be in ENARSI because it's not applicable. Well, technically it is, but we're talking real world networking here, not ENARSI. ENARSI is specific to the certification. So that is what the goal is with real world networking. We're gonna walk through all of this, set it all up in the work. I don't think I'm gonna do a workbook. Maybe I do, but I don't think it's going to work out that way. I think it'll just be a video series that I put together that'll be available for those of you that are looking to do real world networking. I probably will take, let's say it's 50 videos, just as a number. We'll take probably 5 of those videos, I'll put them on YouTube, and if there's any interest in seeing the whole thing, then you guys will be able to come over to Patreon, and it'll be a paid access. So if that's one of the things that I'm looking at doing. So anything that's going to be workbook or more advanced networking type stuff, that'll always become a paid service. I'm still going to be putting out some content here and there on it's not that'll be part of the paid, but I hate to use the term teaser, but that's essentially what they're going to be. They're going to be just videos from the series that you'll be able to watch for free. And if you want to see more, then you'll have to come over and you'll have to pay the premium access. It's just like I said, because people were asking me, how come I'm like, for the longest time I was saying the videos will always be free. It's like, well, just the amount of time and effort that I'm putting into them, I'm getting very, very few views. So if I'm not going to get a ton of views on putting the time and effort into the content, I'm just going to stop putting them out on YouTube. It'll be like everybody else. You're putting a lot of time and effort into some content. I'm going to put it on a platform where if you want to have access to it, you're going there specifically for that. So that is my goal. So that is the end state that I'm trying to accomplish and things like that. But it'll be very real world. And the cool thing about it is I'm releasing this stuff and I'm looking at it from the perspective of releasing content and doing some of these videos live, where I'll see if I can't record and go live at the same time on some of these and get your interaction, and then maybe add to it, because it'll be very, very fluid in that respect. So at least that's my goal. So with that being said, that's what I wanted to cover in this. So the way that the content is going to get done, it's going to be ENCOR and ENARSI first. That's my main priority right now on the channel. And then once the workbook is done, the videos will come later on. And then once that is done, then we'll deal with real world networking. And then real world networking, after that, I'm going to be focusing on getting my service provider series done, the workbook for service provider, as well as this video series that I'm planning on putting it out for that, and stuff like that. So if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, feel free to drop a line, and we will talk to you. For those of you that are interested in watching the coaching session this evening, that will be available starting at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time today. But beyond that, I want to thank you guys for stopping by and hanging out with me, and I'll catch all of you later.